All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get today's sessions rolling. To start off, my name is Matt Schulte. I'm a moderator for this session. I'm currently a master's student in meat science.
And I'm Cassie Scanlon. I'm a PhD student in animal breeding and genetics.
All right, so today our speaker is Lee Whittington. Lee, as president and CEO, is responsible for implementing the corporation's strategic plan and overseeing the administration, funding, and ongoing research in nutrition, engineering, and applied ethology, as well as guiding the graduate student education and technology transfer objectives of the center. Lee's primary focus has been developing research and communication programs that allow the commercial pork industry to adopt new technology and management procedures quickly, thus improving their ability to maximize net income and address sustainability issues. Lee is an active speaker at industry conferences across North America and a regular contributor to several trade publications. In 2005, Lee was awarded the Animal Industries Award in Extension and Public Service from the Canadian Society of Animal Science. This is the highest award given for contribution to the industry by a non-research professional in the animal industry. In 2006, Lee was awarded the Agri-Food Award of Excellence in Agriculture Awareness and Education. The national award was the first to be earned by a Saskatchewan resident, recognizes individuals that have made a significant contribution in promoting public awareness and understanding of agriculture and agri-food sector of the ag industry. This is through outreach activities, events, and projects. So to start off, we're going to watch a short video and then Lee will start.
Hi, does anybody farm like that here? I give full credit to the people at Skippers at Blettel, the Netherlands, for thinking way outside the box. I've had a chance to visit the research farm, and it does exist. It doesn't operate exactly as smoothly. I love the way Jeff Ansel was able to integrate all the media and the video and all of that. It's a lot easier said than done. Okay. So, I wanted to use that Skipper's video first because, they were in a position, what they were doing was looking at how could we improve average daily gain and feed efficiency. They improved average daily gain by about 40%, getting up to about 2 pounds a day versus about 1.7 that they were previous to that. They improved feed efficiency by about 20% and literally got from having, a heavy use of antibiotics on those farms to zero antibiotics. So, they proved the point that if we provide the right environment, let's just check this one. There we go. Okay? All right. If you provide the right environment, the modern genetics and our modern feeding programs can do tremendous things with pigs. So that's just one technology. It's a long way from being anywhere in Iowa or anywhere else in the world. So what I want to talk about today is just some new technologies. We do a lot of new technology development at the Prairie Swine Centre, but we are probably the smallest farm in this room. 330 sows, farrow to finish, produce about 8,300 pigs a year. That most of those go through research in some way. But the last 5 years, I've been traveling, as I travel around the world, to see new technologies. And we invite those new technologies, often small companies, often not even ag companies, to come to us. And our promise is you send it to us, we'll break it, and we'll tell you how we broke it, and we'll send it back to you, and we want the next beta version, and the next one, and the next one, until you get it right, because the people in this room, I don't believe, should be the ones that are testing these new technologies and putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment, and it may not work. And all of the technologies, I can assure you, that come to our door, none of them work as described first time through. Maybe it takes a month, maybe it takes a year or two before they're working to satisfaction of being ready for commercial. So, where are we going? I think we're heading to precision farming. I'm not sure if all of the things we're going to talk about today are precision farming lookalikes, or maybe just high-tech hype, and you should ignore them as soon as possible. But I try to do two things in every presentation. One, I try to make you a better ambassador for our industry. So I'm going to ask you the question, how many meals are there in a pig? Have you ever thought of it that way? Are you producing pigs or pork? Right? Okay, a couple of hints. I'd really like you to write it down in your hand. Don't tell your neighbor because you're going to be embarrassed. 130 kilos, so what's that? 287 pounds or so. So, same size pigs you're raising. Okay, so we're going to do a little Dutch clock thing. So how many people think there's more than 500 meals in that pig? Okay. How about 400 meals or up? That means the first guys that voted should keep voting. Yeah, okay. Yeah. 300? Yeah, okay, now we're getting some participation. Let's drop all the way to 100. You can get 100 meals out of a pig. Okay, all right. Yeah, there's quite a few that are wrong. So if that was an 8-ounce serving, I can get 400 meals out of that pig. And I just think that there's things like that whether we're on the golf course, the curling arena, or wherever, we should know that kind of stuff. It would make us better ambassadors when they say, oh, those pigs, they stink, they do this and that. Yeah, but every single one that goes to market produces at least 400 meals. The other thing that I always try to put in every meeting is a safety tip. And this particular one won an award at the Banff Pork Seminar about 4 or 5 years ago. We had one of those old sow carts that, you know, I call them knuckle breakers. It's conveniently located handle about here. And of course, we hire a lot of people that are kind of like this, and it was just ridiculous. One day, it thankfully broke. So we got together, we got some old rollers. We bought actually splurged and got a brand new pallet jack and put a little winch on it. And, you know, because what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're not lifting too much weight. We got to protect the people that work with us because we need them there every day in order to perform their jobs properly. And for that, we've had a Safety Innovation Award presented to us. So this is Prairie Swine Centre, and we're located in Saskatchewan, and that's about 32 hours drive from here. And we're 300 sows farrow to finish. The initial buildings were built back in the early 80s, and this is all we have left, really is just this one here. The rest of this was built in the 90s. This is our grow finish, shower in, surgery wing. These are our nurseries, all in, all out, and this is our new sow research unit that was built in 2008. So that's the newest facility that we have. And is John in the room? There he is. Okay, so some of you have known John for 10 years. Well, I've known John for 26 years. He hired me to come out to the centre, left the feed industry in Ontario, moved to Saskatchewan, and which was really popular with the grandparents. We had the only grandparents, or had the only children on both sides of the family, extremely popular. So this was John in 1994, so some of you might have met Harold Gagnon, Yun Wei Zung, who's at Illinois, Case DeLong, who recently passed away, nutritionist, and this is our operations manager, Brian Andres. Oh, that's me. But the only thing that's really changed is I had to take the mustache off. But John did too. So our mandate as an organization really is to produce and distribute knowledge derived through original research. We have 3 research scientists, plus research technicians, and graduate students. We do scientific review because there's all kinds of good ideas all over the world that we need to take a look at and see whether or not it applies to the Canadian experience, and economic analysis. And it was that economic analysis part is probably one of the reasons that the Swine Centre has survived 26 years as an independent entity related to the University of Saskatchewan, but completely independent. We have our own board, we have our own budgets, and we live or die on our ability to attract grants and sell pigs profitably, which is a challenge as a research organization. And our vision was to be internationally recognized 26 years ago, and that is providing value to our stakeholders, which over the years has grown from being inside the walls of the barn to being defined as really the whole pork value chain. The trucking industry, the packing industry, all the way through to, we even have consumers with the Retail Council of Canada and those types of discussions. Because anything that you're going to do in terms of innovation, a lot of it has to start in the barn first. And our mission to our producers when we meet with them, we're trying to provide solutions through new knowledge that helps them build profitable and sustainable businesses. You know, our key outputs, of course, we do research. That's how we were designed. That's in our genetics. We also produce a lot of pork, about 8,000 pigs a year. And one of the things that has been our huge differentiator over the years is the ability to do communications, to make that part of why we exist, so that producers who provide base funding would see value. They'd see value immediately, and they'd see it often. But I think one of the things that we often forget about is we produce people. So we produced about 54 graduate students, MSc, PhD, over those years. And of course, those people are located all over the world now in either production and or research and or any kind of industry. And it's those people that are actually going to drive the change in the future, and it's probably, in the long run, going to be our most valuable output. So, what is innovation? You look at this. Well, my interpretation of innovation today, I don't think gluten-free bacon is an innovation. I don't think it's a thing at all, actually. So let's define what really innovation is. It will contribute value to our businesses, to the welfare of the animals or the environment. My definition, nobody else's. So everything in here has to pass that test. Of course, there's going to be the buzzwords of the day are big data. And we're just now actually getting a taste of how big that is. You know, terabytes of data. We do not have people trained to take care of all the data that is now being offered to us as an organization from some of the commercial producers that are trying to reach into and decipher what's their next move. Is there anything practical in that data? And, you know, as a society, we're producing billions of gigabytes every month. I don't even know how big that is, but I do know that when we consider our next move, we may not be hiring a PhD in nutrition. Sorry, John. Oh, he's left already. Our future partnerships and hiring probably needs to be data specialists to support our animal scientists, to support our engineers, because we're getting now to an area where agriculture didn't have a lot of experience. And of course, the Internet of Things. We can't talk about innovation without talking about the reason for a lot of that innovation is because everything's linked. So I was at the back of a meeting the other day, and I had given my presentation, and I was just looking at all these heads, and quite a few of them were nodding like this, and I thought, it was probably Steve Meyer's presentation, so it was a pretty good presentation, right? And no, they have this uncanny interest in their crotch at that particular moment. What they had was their little device. We cannot be separated from our devices. And I think that was just a really good example of, even though you're at an excellent presentation, probably, if you're like the group that I was talking about, I counted them, a little ADD, I counted them, 35% of the people had tuned out of the presentation and were focusing on their email or Snapchat or whatever they were doing. I'm sure they were making notes about the meeting, right? I'd like to believe that as the speaker. And we need to remember we're not alone in all of this. We tried to think, oh yeah, well this is a pork industry thing, this is a ag industry thing, it's a North American thing. No way. You know, the advantage of a lot of countries is they've skipped landlines and a lot of other things that we have spent a lot of money on infrastructure in North America and have jumped straight to these devices. And I don't know if he's on forward contracts for zebu cattle. I don't know that, but there's a chance that he is. And so we need to keep in mind that, you know, it's not just here. We need to be embracing technology in order to maintain whatever leadership that we might have in agriculture. One of the things that's really driving change is sensors. So I borrowed this from a group called PAMI. They're all about heavy iron equipment. That's what they do. And I was looking at them. They gave a similar presentation at a meeting I was at. And I was looking at, you know, irradiance and torque and flow. But they had also reached beyond their heavy metal, and they were talking about estrus and sodium and air quality and glucose, and thinking, you know, this is probably why a lot of the reason we're talking new tech today is because we now have sensors, inexpensive sensors, that allow us to gather data that we've never been able to gather. So one example, not pig related, these two girls are amazing. So they're doing their PhD in the UK, and they're actually looking at the Fusarium fungi, and they came up with the idea, you know, it's really hard to determine when you should be spraying your fungicides. And you could be spraying them every day, but how do I know when? And they came up with a methodology, and you can't really see it very well, but this is a little spike that goes in the ground. And when a fungus spore is about to burst open and flood your field with fungi, a little light comes on, it sends out a Wi-Fi signal to you, and you can determine whether or not it's hit a certain level, and I'm going to go spray fungicide this afternoon. Wow. And they can do it so cheap, $25 a unit. So before I gave this presentation at the Banff conference in January, I checked it out. Their little company can now produce them for $3. So if you can see spores exploding in a field a mile away or 20 miles away, there's something in there that we can bring inside the barn. There's got to be something in there. And so that's just, I think, an example of some really creative people and how they're using technology to better define what precision farming is. Are we out of water? What about cough monitors? These things already exist. So in our little journey today, we're going to go all the way from research applications to commercial. We're going to start outside the barn, and we're going to go inside the barn. And in my opinion, what will determine the success of these technologies will be the ability to use it in the barn. That has to be robust enough. And when we take on new technologies and we offer to break them for the manufacturer, it's not hard, because often it's a matter of weeks or months in the barn and they're no longer functioning. And of course, the other thing that will separate out good technologies from poor is the ability to address the fundamental business need to collect, analyze, and act on aspects of production that have economic value, not just create more numbers that we have no way to interpret. So, compliance and biosecurity. So the first technology is all about biosecurity. Thankfully, this is chicken data, and I'm sure nobody in here has a biosecurity compliance rating that looks like this, which is 35%. Thankfully, it is chicken data, but it's chicken data that's only 5 years old. So you think about all the AI that's gone through the North American chicken flocks in that period of time, they still haven't learned very much. And so one of the little companies, actually in Guelph, Ontario, they're into geofencing. Anybody ever heard of geofencing before? Military uses a bit, yeah. So they've taken this concept and are drawing invisible fences around farms. And what they're doing then is creating an app so that any vehicle or any phone that crosses that line will actually send an information to the server, and so that you will have a permanent record of everyone who's come on and off your farm. And you can even customize it and say, thank you very much for coming to my farm. Please stop and turn around and go away. We don't need anything. Or you could say, go to the White House, check through on our biosecurity, and then come to the farm if you are biosecure. And then thank you for coming as they cross the fence going the other way. And having that base platform on your farm, the other thing they're working on this year is what I would call the democratization of health information. So how many of you will have multiple sites? Does anybody here have pigs? Like I'm really wondering if I'm in the chicken audience here. Yeah? Okay. So it's a very common in our business to have multiple sites spread over large distances. And so what this is asking the people in the barn, I went into the farrowing room today, and there were 2 crates with a lot of scours. That's not normal for us, so I send it out on here, and everybody else in my system, including my vet, gets that notification. And so all of a sudden you've got this real time, what if tomorrow another farm reports the same thing? Is this a PED outbreak on the way? What's going on? But it's going to be real time available within your system. And of course, once you've got once you've got that information, you can, and let's say you have barns all along here, and you could be saying, okay, this barn had an outbreak, so where were the people that were at this barn, suppliers or staff, and where did they go after that? Well, they were here, and they were here, and they were here. So now all of a sudden, I have a heads up on what might be a health issue within my system. Okay, so one of the big challenges to maintaining health on farms is transportation, moving pigs and pig manure around. So this is a small Spanish company. They build trailers, and they figured out that, you know what, all of this idea of baking, which is really, really popular here now as well, but this is really costing us a lot of money. It's hard on our running stock. You know, they came up with a different idea. So the truck gets washed, it backs in, and this green panel is kind of like shower curtains, right? It comes up alongside and tucks in behind the cab. And then these heat generators feed into the back door, and they have sensors in the truck, right in the walls, that when it hits 70 degrees C, you know, okay, we can shut it down, we're good to go. And the interesting thing, when I was visiting them, they said, yeah, you know, we were just comparing notes the other day with a guy out of Minnesota. They're running 40% less gas to do this than what we are with our heating our whole rooms. I said, that's an interesting innovation. I don't know if they're interested in coming in North America or not. Just a little family called Castain, and they have the first one now actually up and running. We do a lot of work with trailers and transportation, trying to determine just how clean they are. So agar plates, that's really the standard, that if you want to see, is there anything in this trailer after it's been washed? Is it live? Is it growing? Take an agar plate, takes several days to incubate it, and what we did was come up with a different methodology and borrowed some technology from the food industry and the hospital industry. And this particular device actually will look at DNA. It can't tell you if it's alive or dead, but in 3 seconds, it can tell you whether or not that trailer's clean. So probably not the sort of thing that you're going to check every trailer that backs up in order to ship a market hog. But if you're at the high end in a nucleus herd, it could be, the device itself is worth about $2,000. We had to, of course, recalibrate it as part of our research project. But it will cost you about $100 to $150 in swabs, and we can tell you where to swab it. And actually, the dirtiest place in a trailer, in all of our surveys, is the floor. You expect it to be tucked up underneath, and you expect some of those places that traditionally don't get washed very well, but then you drive it 20 miles down the road, and it does this, and everything shakes loose, and actually the dirtiest part is often right on the floor. So this is a trailer that we redesigned. We think that trailers are going to be completely redesigned, and in Western Canada, because it's primarily a cattle business, we use a lot of these pot trailers, which are kind of hard on pigs with the doghouse and putting them down underneath. And so two messages that I've got in this slide. One is that the future of research, I believe, is a lot of modeling, trying to determine, you know, this is the trailer, but what we wanted to do was come up with a way of filtering and controlling the air, and focused on just high-value breeding stock to start with. And so we built a custom trailer. It's 1/3 size. I actually had it built in Spain by the Castain family. And our objective in how to design it was by doing a lot of this type of modeling, where we're looking at changes in temperature given different animal loads at different times of the day. So here it is. It's for real. It's made several trips now. And now we're at the point where we've been using various types of viruses to make sure that it actually is performing that well. And now we're going to put naive pigs in it and park it beside a PRRS barn and see just whether or not it is actually going to work. And that's our job, right? We start off with some very basic science, but making sure that if you're going to actually adopt some of these things, that it actually works. So our engineering group has been working on this. This is not one of ours, but I think there's an application here in our business. So these are sensor motes. So these are designed to be dumped into a grain bin by the handful, and they communicate with each other when they're in there to be able to give you a reading. Where are the hot spots in the bin? What's the moisture content? What's the temperature? And every bean is able to do it, and then to be able to communicate on a small network, and then that small network is tied into a computer on the side of the bin, which then can broadcast it to your home computer. And this type of technology, not aware of it being used in the pig industry or in animal industry at all, but I think there might be an opportunity there for us to think about that one. And of course, what's making this all possible? Cheap electronics. So, just went on to Amazon. You might have heard of Raspberry Pi. I think it was originally developed in the UK. Mini computers, right? And so, went on to Amazon, $55 Canadian. I think that's like $12.99 in US right now. But so it's cheap technology that is driving our ability to be able to capture lots of it and to retain it and use it. So that same company that was building the geofence, they've now got something under works they're calling Transport Genie, and what it will do is it will use that ability of these small devices, small devices located all throughout the trailer, to be able to know in a real-time basis for the driver and for head office, how is each compartment doing, what is the temperature, and eventually they'll even be able to put small cameras in there if they want to. This one is a little more high-tech. So Yonghui Zhang, University of Illinois, has been working on this for about 17 years now. He used to be at the center. He was our engineer. And what he was telling me was that the high-temperature liquethermification of pig manure is an excellent source as an alternative for fuel. And so he shipped me a couple of slides a few years ago after he was making good progress, because he was talking about swine manure is almost perfect because it's got this balance of fat as well as fiber in it. And so this isn't actually science fiction. So this was their 1998 batch reactor, and in 2007 they built a 40-barrel-a-day plant. And in 2010, they built a 160-barrel-a-day plant. Well, at today's oil prices, of course, it isn't working, but the technology is working. So when I think about where would I build my next hog barn, I already have challenges, especially in Western Canada, getting people to drive 40 kilometers or 40 miles out of town to come work there. And maybe between this kind of technology and a couple of the others I'm going to talk about, maybe we should be thinking of relocating our farms closer to places that can actually make better use of our one big out product, and that is manure. The other one, of course, if you're going to build closer to a population, is odor, right? And so we've been doing work with a group out of Quebec called CDPQ. In 2013, we finished a series of trials, and it reduced ammonia in the exhaust air by 77%, dust by 95%, and odor by 75%. We were thinking, okay, we've really struck on something here. Well, then I go to the 2016 Eurotier in Germany, and it's on again this fall. And if you really want a great experience, go to Germany and see Eurotier. It's incredible, the kind of technology that's there. So I'm standing at this one booth, and I look around. There are 3 booths that are selling this technology. This is biofiltration, the ability to run clean water down through all of these slots and nooks and crannies and push the air through it. I think we could become really, really good neighbors if we treated our air. Now, what's the cost of doing that? How do you channel all your air into one spot? Those are huge engineering questions. But the technology is there that, if we were able to move closer to population centers, our 3-phase power would be less money, our laneways and our development costs would be hugely decreased over what they are. Here's one that we are doing in-house, and this is the use of nanoparticles. So they could be magnesium oxide, zinc oxide, but on the nanoscale, a billionth of an inch. And we've been putting it in filters and running air through it. We've been putting it in the headspace underneath the pits or underneath the slats, actually mixing it in the slurry. And this is just one of our outcomes, sampling days across the bottom. So this is hydrogen sulfide production, 600 ppm. Add it, 5 days later, there's nothing. Now, when we first started this work 11 years ago, that would cost us $60 a pig. Well, so it's interesting research, but has no application. But because now various manufacturers as well as military have gotten hold of this idea, that the next idea is, how cheap can we get this? If we can get this down to $1 a pig, is it worth taking all the gases out of our operation? We're impregnating it into the walls, making it easier to clear, getting rid of biofilm, simply because biofilm cannot attach to or grow in the presence of nanoparticles. We're doing it against salmonella and other bacterium, and you can see, like in 2-hour period, the ability of magnesium oxide, in this case, to completely wipe out the challenge that we put in front of it. I guess I started off with the cleanliness and performance and talked about shippers, what they're doing. This is just some of their numbers. The really important one, if you go to their little research farm, is the fact that they've been, in spite of all the investment that they've made, they're still making twice as much net per pig through that operation as what they did in what they would call their traditional operation. Something else at our place is to be able to take a look at, these are special waterers, so we want to be able to see how much water is wasted. We want to see on a pig-by-pig basis an RFID in every tag, in every pig's ear, which pigs are there, what's the temperature of those pigs. We're using infrared photography. And we're able to tell very closely, based on what is the outside temperature and what is the temperature of the individual pigs, whether or not we're faced with an upcoming change in health status in those pigs. Here's another one from Europe, from Spain, that there's about 1 million sows worth of data in here. So as a big data example, Carlos Pinheiro has the PigChamp Pro Europa franchise for all of Europe. And what he was finding is that retrospectively, if you looked at these 1 million matings and you went backwards, what he found was that if a sow at her first parity gave you more than 15 born alive, that there was a very good probability that she was going to produce 26 pigs more lifetime. She was going to stay in the herd longer, be more productive, have fewer problems. And his finding would be that all farms have some of what he calls super sows, and then it becomes necessary for us to find super stock people to manage these. So the next time we have Carlos in town, we'll be advertising to come and talk about, how do you do that? Because right now he's finding that in terms of the cost of production, this is US dollars, but he's doing it on the European experience, that a 20-kilo pig, he's dropping his cost of production by $6 US by looking at what the super sow in his herd can give to him. Another thing that he's doing is using an electronic pen. So instead of taking all these fancy equipment in and dropping them through the slats, he's actually created an electronic pen, which you can buy anywhere. But he's created the software that would allow you to do something like this. He's using it to score hooves, and he's doing it on a piece of paper. That piece of paper is linked to his computer via Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and all of my sloppy writing that when I do in the barn is converted over to digital immediately. So now all my handwritten records become immediately digitized, and now I can do something with that. I can store it and I can manage it. Oh yeah, just back to biosecurity and compliance. This is his most interesting idea, I think. He calls it the PRRSons Project. He's saying, when people are in the barns, they have a set flow where they should and should not go. So if you're working in the sow area and you're working in farrowing, you're not supposed to be going over to grow finish and then back again. And you ask them, no, never do that. He puts RFID tags in the little pouches that they're carrying, has an inexpensive phone set up at the various doors, and he knows exactly how people are moving, and they're not moving according to the standard operating procedure. There's all kinds of technology out there for better gathering of pig weight data. Optiscan, that was supposed to be available to us about 7 or 8 years ago. I think it's coming. Has anybody ever been exposed to this technology yet? Like camera held weight estimates? It's supposed to be within 2 or 3% of actual. They still haven't shipped me one to break. I think they're breaking them themselves. But And of course, the last time I was in Europe a year ago, they were showing me a tablet that would do exactly the same thing. So, we need to wrap up here. All kinds of new technologies coming. Some of them I don't think are going to make it. So this is called PigNap. So isoflurane, which is a rather restricted substance here, you put the pig in there, you ram this thing down so that its testicles are sticking up, and then you perform surgery while it's completely knocked out with isoflurane, pick it up, put it on the floor, and it recovers, maybe. I don't know. Not every new innovation has a place on our farms, I don't think. This little guillotine device, this is a really interesting idea. So split suckling, okay, so we got lots of cases where split suckling makes a lot of sense. We've got 15, 16 pigs born on gilts, and so they're saying you put this chunk of wall in and you drag all the big pigs over onto this side of the wall, and you set the timer, and the guillotine will open and let them all back together so you don't have to go in there and remix the pigs after X number of minutes. I just hope it doesn't close partway through. And here's one, this is a small company out of Quebec. You're seeing them here now. I noticed that they're actually sponsors. We installed some of this equipment 4 or 5 years ago, tried to break it and couldn't. Said, oh, I'm interested. So we've got all 5 farrowing rooms hooked up now. Kind of pricey on a commercial basis, but as a research farm, this is collecting all the data in terms of all feed disappearance and when, and allowing us to bump her up or bump her down based on her actual performance. I think that technology's got a lot to share with us. Last one out of Spain. So this is 100% traceability of every vaccine and every antibiotic that goes through the barn, because for any pig that has an RFID tag on it, she will wand the pig and at the same time give the injection. It automatically goes back to the cloud. It says, okay, DIN number on that product, how much is left in inventory, withdrawal date, etc., all linked to that animal or that pen or that room, depending on where you've got the RFID tag situated. And one that is going to be really important in the future, when all these pieces of technology are going to be throwing data on us, is how are we going to get it to communicate with each other? I'm not going to go through 15 different pieces of software or 15 apps and try and make decisions. So they're calling this Farms Mother, which is to bring everything together. Interesting idea. They've been at it 3 years. I think they got a ways to go, but they have farms all over the world. Another one that I don't think is ever going to make it, this flapper. I saw it in 2009 in Denmark. It looks exactly the same. It's supposed to allow you to go and, go to Pinterest and look up interesting designs for your house construction. So it's going to breed the sows for you, and you don't need to be there. I don't know about that one. Here's an interesting one, also out of Denmark. Farrowing room monitor hangs over top of each sow, and so if you've got a very large operation, you've got multiple stock people going through that room every hour or two, then the idea is you will put in, I had this many stillborns, I assisted 3 more, and when you're in here in half an hour, please check this sow, because the top of it is going to beep that she needs to be checked, and because I decided that on my first rounds through. And it didn't take as long to break this one. The second one took a little longer to break. I don't know, maybe I didn't get to World Pork Expo this year. Did anybody see them? I think they're on the market. If you've got a large operation, it's an interesting way to handle all of your farrowing data, because it just then downloads and drops it all straight into the computer. Next generation, implants. So we know exactly what's going on inside the animal. So, technology, I think, can we be sustainable? I think agriculture and pork production in particular has always been able to do that because we continue to modernize, because we continue to use all the technology available to us. And the race isn't over. This is looking at 40 years ago. This is looking at today, and it's measuring the darkness of the red is measuring the calorie deficit in those particular countries. And as you can see, North America is quite excess and is capable of export, but there's still a lot of the world that is in a calorie deficit. We need to continue to do a better job. So this is a picture of our place back home, way back in the 60s. tobacco barn, cattle, pride of the farm feeders, bang, 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 if you've ever walked through a yard with those. And that's not my parents. But this is the modernization of agriculture. And this is what I tell my people at the Swine Centre, that in today's marketplace, it's really only organizational capability to adapt that's our only sustainable competitive advantage. So I wish you luck in continuing to adapt and look to new technology to help you do that. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come to the ISU. I really enjoyed the program this morning. And if there is any questions or time left, Matt, I'm happy to deal with that. Otherwise, I will be around all day.